Hey folks, we want to help you get out of the overwhelm and start mastering the micro steps to success in this podcast.
Yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about today. So if you happen to struggle with overwhelm,
especially in your growth journey, like suddenly you're doing a little excavation, you see all the things that need to be fixed all at once, or at least that's the thought.
Yeah, exactly. You're definitely going to want to listen to this today. So we're also going to give you a couple steps on how to create new habits.
Yeah, to start.
Like the disposition of how to create new habits.
Habits that like make all the things that you think you need to do and breaking them down into some really small, incremental, easy steps that you can take that are moving you forward on your pilgrimage.
Yes.
So we'll see you in there.
Boom. Hey guys, welcome back. I actually want to rename this episode. We had it before, it was a different one, but I really like the name From Overwhelm to Micro Steps to Success.
Cool. Overwhelm to Micro Steps for Success. This is really inspired by one of the feedback responses we got from a recent survey, and somebody shared that when I start my journey of self-discovery, I can unearth quite a bit of work to do. Right? There's a lot of different areas that I can focus, and I feel overwhelmed with that. So give me a little bit of help here. So that's really what the focus is. Thank you so much for the person who shared that. But that's going to be the focus here.
It's a really common theme too. Yeah. And really one of the reasons why we're surveying our people is just to talk to you all to find out what is it that you want and what do you want to know more of and what can we actually fill in the gaps, you know? And so I like this one because that is a really common theme. We deal with the overwhelm a lot with our clients. You know, people have a lot of overwhelm. Should we just dive right into it?
Yeah, let's do it. Okay. So like the overwhelm piece, guys, a lot of the time it's like we got to have all this stuff done. We got to be baked. We've said it again. We're pilgrims on the journey. It's going to take time. Growth takes some time. And so some of the things that we're going to give you is some ways of short-circuiting that overwhelm. That's where we're going to start. But also we're going to go into 3 habits that we invite you to cultivate and that we help you cultivate at Metanoia Catholic that really help you start to measure success and measure growth in those really small, bite-sized, incremental measurements that it's hard to get overwhelmed when you start to measure it that way. So it's a bit of a hack.
Yes.
But let's talk overwhelm, Erin.
Yeah, overwhelm is an emotion. It usually shows up when you're kind of like pursuing a passion, when you're doing something new, when you're really just living your life in general, when you're maybe even reflecting on your interior life, like this person was
the work you got to do.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's an emotion. It's what we would call an indulgent emotion, meaning it just keeps you stuck. It keeps you, it's
doesn't
just
bear
like,
fruit. It's
surface level. It keeps you stuck. It seems self-protective, but it really isn't. I think it's one of the biggest tools that the enemy uses to keep us stuck, to keep us not moving into our unique call of sanctity, not moving into becoming a saint.
It's not a motivating emotion.
No.
For growth,
no.
Certainly.
It's a hamster wheel. That's really what it is. And it actually creates more drama the more you indulge in it.
Yes. So before we can even get into some of these new habits, which are like new behaviors that are going to help to, incrementally measure your growth and make it less overwhelming, we have to kind of short circuit that overwhelm here first, because you're not going to be able to build new habits from a place of overwhelm. It's going to continue. It's hitting the gas pedal and the brake at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. So overwhelm, what I have found, comes from a series of thoughts. Sometimes they're all together, sometimes they're separate, but they kind of create separate emotions too. It's a complex emotion. I would say it's a complex emotion. Usually it's a combination of stress and fear kind of being in the same boat, powerlessness and urgency. That's what overwhelm feels like. It's like, ugh. And so it comes from these thoughts where it's too much. Something is too much. Okay, that kind of creates that stress and that fear. And I need to address all of this right now.
Okay.
So, and I see those two being different thoughts too. So like, I need to address all of this leads to this sense of powerlessness, maybe a little bit of urgency, maybe a little bit of stress. And then also there's that right now, which definitely creates urgency.
So I have all this work to do.
Yes.
And it has to be done right this second. I
Yes.
have all of this stuff that I've just unearthed in my personal growth journey.
That's right.
And it all has to be fixed and healed right now.
Or God has given me all of my mission right now, which never happens, by the way. And I need to pursue it right now.
Needs to be done.
Yes. Like I need to address all of it right now.
Yeah.
So that if you're out there and you're like, that's me, so what I'm going to do is short circuit these emotions based off of kind of their different nuances and give you guys some more useful questions to ask. Because when we start spinning out in overwhelm, we have moved from the place of reality to drama. To complete drama, like, we've like lost all sense of reality. So this first tool that I'm going to give you, it's really just questions to ask yourself, but it really addresses that measurement of too much, which is usually arbitrary. It's usually like made up. We make it up. It's subjective. Like there's no very few times can we find factually like this is too much. It's a perception.
Or even so much. Like there's so much cleaning that has to happen in the house. There's so much preparation that needs to happen before my in-laws show up.
That's what we call an extra word over here. It's just like so extra. It makes it bigger.
Makes a great story.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Makes for a great story. It's a good headline.
But really not factual at all. So the technique for this one is to get more factual, right? What is too much? What exactly is too much? And also like, what is that line of demarcation from it being sufficient amount to being too much? Like when have we crossed that line? When you can start to answer these questions, it really starts to ground you. Like I think just the actual question, what are the facts that we know according to this measurement that you have in your mind? What are the facts? It's so grounding to like bring somebody back to a place of drama-free and yourself back to this place of drama-free. So
it's not a cool story anymore.
No, it's not.
Cool story.
And you know what? And you don't have an excuse to spin in that story anymore.
Yeah.
Which I think is another reason why we kind of indulge in overwhelm is it does feel like we're doing something a little bit. And it feels very important because we feel it very hard. We feel it like strongly. And so we're like, God, I'm doing things. I'm actually thinking about what to do about this. Like, no, you keep thinking about these arbitrary measurements that you've made up in your head. So yes. Second way that we would address this is to address that powerlessness that comes from that statement, I need to, or I have to. You can fill in the blanks there. I need to, or I have to address all of this.
Yeah, it kind of takes away a little bit of your agency, your freedom. It's like, I have to do this, right? Versus choosing to do something. It's
Correct.
like, I have to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm glad that you brought that up because it's like, could you actually make this a choice? Or like versus an absolute obligation? Is this an obligation or is this a choice? That's a good question. But also, do you really need to address this? Would it be prudent for you to address this in your current state? Could you actually be could you actually be effective if you were to address this right now in this overwhelmed, powerless feeling state?
I think what this starts to do as well is it starts to reveal the unspoken or undefined ideals that we hold, right? Say, for example, it's like my in-laws are coming. I have to clean the entire house, right? Because there's this image in your head of your in-laws coming in and not having any reason to judge you, right? For a dirty house or something like that, where it's like, okay, that's the ideal that I'm pursuing. And then we can start to kind of ask if this is like, why does this need to be so important? Why is it why is that our ideal? Especially if the fruits of trying to live up to that ideal are causing all of this overwhelm and anxiety and maybe spilling over into the way that you're treating your kids, treating your spouse, treating your coworkers, right? Those aren't really good fruits.
Yeah. Yeah, just be on to yourself. The words that you use, they have power. Like I have to, I need to. Those are always going to lead to powerlessness. And then finally, do you have to address all of it right now? Once again, kind of dramatic, all, too much, all. It's like, could that all be broken down into increments? And how would you prioritize those increments?
Or even like 3 things. Sometimes there's been times where you and I have had conversations and like those words have come up, or clients have had this comes up, and we say, like, just tell me what all the things are.
Yes.
And all the things are 2 things.
Yeah, usually.
That's it. So it's like, it's so much simpler when you start. Yes, you get super factual with it. And just by restructuring the sentence to be aligned, like structuring it for reality versus a headline or clickbait, it's just the overwhelm kind of dissipates.
Well, this has been coming up a lot because we've been surveying people, and it's like all the people, like we've been kind of catching ourselves like being like a lot of people, and it's wait, is there like 4?
How many said that? Like, it was 3.
Yeah,
It was 3 people.
A lot. Wow, that does sound like a lot. So just kind of notice even just those measurement words, and are they correct, and just be objective, be factual with that. And then finally, we have the right now, which creates that urgency. Once again, you're just like, does this need to happen right now?
Yeah, there's like an or else. When there's an urgency, it's like, this has to happen or else. And it's like, insert the evil. And then that leads to anxiety, right? That's your recipe for anxiety.
And what is the worst case scenario? If this doesn't happen right now, will everybody perish? Probably not. What would be the worst case scenario in this situation if it didn't happen?
Yeah, are the in-laws going to be like, you filthy, we're going to a hotel? It's like, good.
Yeah.
I love my in-laws.
I know, but and then also what actually can be done right now. I like that because it's a little bit more empowering. It's like factually what could be done in that way. But yes.
Cool.
That is it for the overwhelm. Ask yourself better questions and just be onto yourself with the language that you're using.
Yeah. And like, if you feel overwhelmed by the amount of questions that Erin just gave you to ask, like
just choose one.
Just choose one. But also you don't have to go through this on your own, right?
Yes.
There's a reason why Metanoia Catholic exists, and it's so people can come alongside you, or coaches can come alongside you and help you out with some of these things. And we have this beautiful thing called 30 for 30. 30 minutes, $30. There's a lot a coach can do in 30 minutes, right? To help you overcome some of this overwhelm. Just go to CatholicCoaching.com, 30 for 30. Every single one of our resident coaches has a link for that. You can just schedule an appointment, pay your $30, show up, get coached, get rid of your overwhelm.
Yeah.
Or start moving towards getting rid of your overwhelm. A little less drama in your life.
And the reason why we wanted to address this first, and Matt, you already spoke about this, but it's like, okay, overwhelm has become a mind habit, right? If you struggle with overwhelm, it's because it's become a habit of your mind. We need to remove those habits of our mind, or at least work on those and make space for new habits. And that's kind of how it works. Like we can impose other new habits, but if you are still spinning in overwhelm, everything in the remaining of this podcast episode will fall on deaf ears. You'll be like inspired by it, but you might not act on it because you haven't addressed the actual root of the problem, which is that overwhelm.
Yeah, overwhelm does not create good fruits. Good fruits being new habits that are going to get you out of overwhelm, right? That's more custody the mind thing that Erin just talked about, but it can pave the way, right, for us to be able to start doing some of these things because we're not in panic mode, right? Okay. So moving into these guys, these are just 3 habits that are going to help to measure your journey on a more incremental way, so that you can celebrate some of those successes and not be like our friend who gave us this response in the survey. So overwhelmed by all the things, all the work, all the healing, all the growth, all the vice that needs to be overcome all at once.
Yeah,
it doesn't, right? It is a lifelong journey. And God willing, doing these habits here, I think will help you to have your purification journey on this side of heaven versus, the other side of the veil. Nobody has to go to purgatory, right? And I know there's some people, it's like, oh, I'm just going to spend time in purgatory. Like they just give up. It's like, no, the grace is available now for you to receive that grace and for you to kind of endure the temporal demands of justice on this side of heaven, so that you don't have to go to purgatory, so that you can be a saint, and you can't the unitive way is achievable for everyone on this side of heaven. All right. And so these practices are really drawing from, St. Ignatius, these doctors of the church. This is stuff I learned at my spiritual direction certification. Okay. So these are things habits to start to build into your life. All right. And they don't have to be all at once. Again, incrementally start to build these into your life and start to chisel away. We don't all have to go to purgatory. Okay. So the first one's build a habit of a nightly examination, or some form of an examination. All right. What I love about examinations is the fruit of an examination is you start to get a very healthy baseline of where you're at, like an emotional baseline. What does my day look like? What feels good? What doesn't feel good? Because when we're doing an examination, that's where we're exploring four things, I would say. Areas of resonance, right? Where we feel like they're very aligned with the Holy Spirit in that moment. Something's ringing true with us. This experience was a good experience, right? Why? Okay, the Lord's kind of putting our finger on that. Let's acknowledge that. We're looking for areas of dissonance. That's the opposite, right? That's where we feel like there's a discordant note, like we're singing off key or something was just out of alignment, right? We'll get into an example of this and where we found some dissonance in a recent discernment. We're looking for fruitfulness. And fruitfulness is certainly the fruits of the Holy Spirit in you. We're looking for virtue showing up, certainly internally, but also externally in your actions. We're also looking for alignment with the natural law, right? That is something, even naturally good fruits that are coming forth from our actions. And then finally, we're looking for those called areas of barrenness. That's the opposite of the fruitfulness. And this is where vice might show up. This is where those things that are opposite of the fruits may show up.
Also going back to the overwhelm, look at that. That is like one of the most insidious tools of the enemy, because it leads you to doing nothing. Yes. Barrenness and emptiness.
Yes. When you hear indulgent emotions, we use that a lot. Think barrenness. They're indulgent because they
create
feel
nothing.
Like we indulge in them. We feel like they're giving us something good, but they're not. They create no good fruits from those things. Okay. And so we want to get that good, by exploring those four things, the resonance, the dissonance, the fruitfulness, and the barrenness, we can start to establish a bit of a healthy baseline. And this is just a natural consequence of doing a nightly examination. I liken it to a book that I'm reading called Pain Free. Thank you, Janae Franco, for giving this to me to help me overcome some of my back pain. And what that book is helping me to identify is just what health feels like in my body. Just be mindful of what health feels like. So as soon as there's a little bit of misalignment that happens, I can address the problem right there through a couple of exercises to get me back in alignment before that thing accrues over time and suddenly I have chronic pain that I'm dealing with, right? That didn't happen overnight. It happened from just allowing those subtle misalignments to build over time. Okay. An example I like to bring up here for a recent discernment. Guys, if you haven't listened to our one of our recent episodes, Expensive Lessons, this is where we talked about our live event that we were promoting big time last fall, and in December we decided that, man, this is not good fruit being generated here.
Yes.
Right. So we were pushing forward, not a whole lot of we weren't really applying a lot of the good discernment rules. We were ignoring a lot of that dissonance, we realized. We were ignoring a lot of the barrenness that was showing up. We were ignoring the lack of fruits that were showing up.
There was a lot of overwhelm too.
And there was a ton of overwhelm that was going on with this. And so but the one thing that I would say was a good point of resonance was we had this desire to be with our community in real life. Okay.
And even just more generally speaking, building community.
Yes.
Within the academy.
Yes.
And within our actual community. Yeah.
Yes. And so that was the thing that we saw. Okay. So we were grasping at that desire, not really discerning, not really asking the Lord, how do you want to fulfill this desire for greater community and connection with our community here? We just kind of assumed, we saw what the best practices are, what other people were doing. And we just like, God, we can do it too. And we went forward with it, and gosh, it just imploded. Right. So ultimately, yes, we decided to pull the plug on that. If you haven't heard yet, we ultimately decided not to do any event, right? Not even we were playing with the idea of maybe doing something that was more affordable. But again, when we applied the good discernment tools, we literally did St. Ignatian option 1, third mode discernment on this by the book. and it jumped off the page that this was not the right time for us to do those things. But that poor discernment was really a lack of examination that was going on. Okay. But when we finally reset, we got on course. Okay. So, pro tips here, or just a practical tip for living into this habit. There's no other way to put this, you guys. It's literally making the act of the will to do this. All right. And I started doing it. The easiest way that I started doing it was lying in bed at night. I would just do it in my head.
What did you do?
I would just,
nightly examine.
I would invite the Lord. I would invite the Lord in.
Did you say what this is? The nightly examine?
Well, the nightly examine is really, there's a lot of, it's not just St. Ignatius, but he certainly has one of them, but it's you're recollecting your day.
Okay.
All right. And you're not just recollecting the times where you missed the mark and the sins, but you're also recollecting where you felt the Lord's presence abundantly,
of resonance.
Right? That deep place of resonance. We're going to get into that a little bit more in the second habit here, but most of the time that's the place that's missed. We just focus on the sins, and that's not where we need our sole focus to be on. But then from that, you want to create some sort of resolution moving forward. So that's an examination without a resolution can be somewhat indulgent, right? We want there to be something new that we're committing to beyond that. It's great to grow in awareness, but no, let's commit to some sort of resolution.
It's like a penitential action of sorts. It's like, okay, I'm going to
That's an
do
aspect
this
of it.
tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay.
The repentance is certainly part of it, but it's the commitment piece, the resolution that you're making is the most important part, I would say.
I think it's like also, yes, it's an act of the will. You have to use your will, but I'm going to add a little bit of motivation here.
Do it.
If you are so sick of going to confession and confessing the same sin over and over again, that's probably the Lord calling you into doing this examine.
Yes.
If you just have vice patterns that you keep falling into, maybe it's not necessarily a sin, but you're like, I feel inclined to talk badly about this person, right? Like I kind of have some resentment towards them, and like, okay, so that's probably an invitation to do a daily examine of sorts.
What I've seen that's been a fruit of my nightly examine is, well, yes, I still have lots of sins of commission, right? Actions that are sinful. I am starting to capture sinful thoughts much more. And those are things that I'm bringing to confession. And folks, like the thought is the origin of the action. St. Mark the Ascetic. When you sin, blame your thought, not your behavior. For had your mind not run ahead, your body would not have followed. All right. So it kind of gives, I'd say, another level of fruitfulness.
Yes. Yeah. So you said that you laid in bed. Sorry, I think I cut you off.
No, so I would just lay in bed and I would just go through kind of what was it, Lord, that you, where I can improve? I invite the Blessed Mother and I invite Our Lady of Sorrows, whose heart of sword is pierced so the thoughts of many may be revealed. Blessed Mother, Our Lady of Sorrows, reveal some of these hidden thoughts, or just even one hidden thought. And guys, like that's what I did. It was like, if I could find one thing that the Lord is inviting me to improve upon, that was a win. Okay. And then, where were the places where I found some resonance with you, Lord? I did this. I was with my daughter. I kind of, took some time, even though I felt like I needed to get all this stuff done. I took some time. I set a timer with Alexa for 10 minutes. I said, I'm going to play with you for 10 minutes. And what was that like? If I was really able to connect with her, or we started to learn how to play Go Fish. Like these are little points of resonance that can come up. And folks, when you start to see these things now and celebrate these things, you start to see the opportunities in the future to say yes to those again. It starts to guide your fiat, guide your yes.
And what else do you ask? And then areas of
and
dissonance.
then it's just like, okay, where do I want to enter into a bit of a resolution? I'm going to get into a lot more of these on some of the specifics in the next two habits because it kind of breaks us down. But I just asked for a resolution. The resolution, guys, I like to make it I'll say this for now. I like to make it as simple as possible.
But you didn't include areas of dissonance. That's why I'm asking.
Well, yeah, that's in kind of the place of like, okay, Lord, where was it that I fell short?
I see.
Like that's kind of included in
I did
the
not
dissonance.
hear that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like I look at the resonance and the fruitfulness. I look at the dissonance and the barrenness. I kind of ask those questions, bring it to the Lord, and it starts there. But now I find that I have a more fruitful examine when I do that as part of my night prayer, and I don't do it in bed, but I go into another room and I do it there, and then I come to the side. But guys, just even like if there's one thing that you do, it's like, Lord, where can I improve tomorrow? One thing, and like make a resolution.
Yeah.
Like that, even that resolution is an act of the will. There's grace in that. Okay. Mm-hmm. Even if you don't want to do it, Lord, I don't want to do it. Help me want to do it.
Yeah.
There's an act of the will.
Increase my desire for it. Yeah.
Awesome. The other part of the practical tip here I think is important is if you're finding it that you're a way of growing and opportunities to find resonance is sometimes changing your environment. All right. So if you find yourself surrounded by a bunch of people that they don't care about their spiritual growth or their personal growth, they're very happy with the status quo. All they want to talk about is very like surface level things, and they're not really interested in growing personally. Right. If you stay in that environment, you're probably not going to grow a whole lot. Okay. So even changing that environment, getting involved in other conversations, and opening yourself up to other community, that's where often we encounter these moments where the Holy Spirit pricks our conscience. We get out of ourselves. We go into a new environment. This is a way of seeking, right? We can kind of go into communities. This is what we're seeking to make our academy, a community where you can go in with a bunch of people that are growth-minded Catholics like you.
Yes.
And just by hearing what other people are going through, there might be some point of resonance that you have not have heard had you been just kind of in the status quo community over here.
Yeah. And you know what? When you're around other people who are doing their own work, you can't fall into that habit of being like, they don't know what they're talking about. Like,
what calls you out?
It's also like, because of, it's like, note the source, right? Mm-hmm. Like if this person is doing their own work and they're taking their own responsibility and they're bringing this up, this is not a reaction on their part. This is not them not doing their own work. It's probably a product of them doing their work and feeling like they need to share this with you.
Yes.
And so it kind of like up levels, like if there is any correction that happens, it like up levels it a little bit more because of the people. This
is something that I've noticed with so we're shifting our academy to be much more communal based. There's going to be a lot of forums and interaction, direct messaging. Like it's really going to be a community, an online community, and then there's going to be opportunities for people to encourage people to get together locally, things like that. But we've already been kind of experienced this a little bit with our coaches and certification and those that have gone through Catholic Coaching Foundations we just had a Slack community, right? We're going to be moving away from that, but it's been an incredible place where we've just been immersed in an environment of other people that are also doing their own work.
Yes.
And when we say doing their own work, they're actively taking thoughts captive. They're reducing the drama from their and the overwhelm, the drama. And when you're around people that are just grounded
and taking responsibility for their own lives
and virtuous and growing in virtue, it starts to change you, right? You can't that stuff bleeds over. It can hold you accountable at times.
Or you leave. That's usually it.
Or it's just like, I don't want any part of this.
Yeah.
Pricking my conscience.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's move on.
So that's the first habit, is that nightly examine. The second two habits really have to do with what you're doing in that nightly examine. Okay. So again, how do we make this small? How do we make this incremental so that we can celebrate the small victories? And that's what I want to invite you to do here. The second habit is building the habit of celebrating the small victories, the smallest of victories. A couple years ago, we did a podcast called Baptizing the Gap and the Gain, episode 74 for us, if you want to check that out. And that was all about measuring those small victories constantly, looking backwards, measuring those small victories. I think with an examination, we often miss this part. We get so hyper-focused on where we're falling short. And we have a saying here at Mennonite Catholic, if you focus on the fall, you will fail. If you focus on the fall, you will fail.
And we also don't ignore the fall, too.
No.
Like, I think that's a good point, too.
It's part of the reality.
It's like you're looking. So the word focus, I think, is very different, too. And I think that's the line of demarcation here where it says you can look at the fall and learn from the fall and pray right for grace to not fall again. But focusing on it is that indulgence, right? That really you're putting effort into it. You're ruminating on it. You're actually,
It's a subtle Pelagianism.
Yeah.
That shows up. And this is the result that we see when you're constantly focused on how busted up you are, all the ways that you miss the mark and all the things that you suck at.
Yeah. Self-indulgence.
First of all, fosters a real vice of negativity, an attitude of negativity. And Father Ripperger's got a whole podcast episode that I think is incredible. Look up Father Ripperger's talk on negativity, right?
Yeah.
It really keeps you stuck, and it really keeps you out of praise and thanksgiving, and it really isolates you. Okay, so if you find yourself being a negative person, all right, and one of the things he talks about is that in that negativity, we kind of get a little bit of a dopamine hit.
Yes. Yeah. Because we kind of feel justified in it. Yeah.
Especially when it's habitual.
But also it's Philippians 4:8, like whatever is true, whatever is good, whatever is just, whatever is noble,
lovely.
Focus on these things. This is what St. Paul was telling them to focus on.
Yes.
So we can choose what we focus on.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So equal airtime is kind of another spread. Like we want to give equal airtime to these things. Okay. So we want to make sure that we're focusing on, if we just focus on the fall, we'll get the negativity, we'll get the depression, we'll get the despair. We're not going to grow at that point. Okay. We give up. We beat ourselves up to death. Okay. And then, but if we focus on those small wins, and guys, like when I say small wins, I'm talking like
teeny.
I felt the urge, even though I'm on Exodus 90, I felt the urge to pull out my phone and check the ESPN recap on the Monday Night Football game. And I chose not to. I chose to stay present. My hand was on my phone, and I took my hand off my phone, and I just allowed my focus to stay present to whoever was in front of me in that moment, or whatever the Lord was calling me to in that moment.
Maybe it's my temperament, but I think that's a huge win, actually. I would even make that smaller.
Tell me.
So even if you were like, okay, same example, like have my hand on the phone and I'm on Exodus 90 and I'm like, I'm not supposed to be looking at stuff. And I just wait. Like I still look at it, but I wait for like 2 minutes. I don't give in immediately to that.
Okay.
I still look at that as a win.
Okay.
In that because you've delayed it. You've delayed that immediate response. It's still an act of sacrifice. It's not the full act of sacrifice. It's not like what you should be doing. But still, like that is what we're talking about. Teeny tiny
There's
wins.
Fruits.
When you delay it for a little bit and you're not immediately giving into it, like that is a teeny tiny win. And that's worth celebrating as well.
Yes. Yes. Allow Christ to carry the heavy burden, right? But I love that. I love that.
That's why I like what
Kinda
Beth.
Like, God it! I wish I would have just looked at the scores.
Yeah, what Beth does.
Beth Bubik,
It's called delay and pray. So it's not like fast. I mean, she teaches people how to fast, but it's not like you got to do this perfectly the first time. It's like no, you just can delay it first, and then while you're delaying, you're praying. Like that. That's a win.
Yeah. That's one of the things I like about Exodus 90 is you have this small community and this fraternity where you can share those wins. Because guys, it's one thing to just kind of note something and claim it as a win yourself. But when you voice that win to somebody else and then they get to bounce back to you and they're like, way to go. It really creates momentum.
Yeah.
Where you're celebrating these things. And so having community to be able to celebrate, this is something that we're building into our academy as well. We're going to have something called Wednesday, right? Every Wednesday. It's a Wednesday where we're able to celebrate these wins and cheer one another on with these wins. It might not sound like a big deal. Guys, it really creates culture. It
we do
creates
it once
momentum.
a week. We do it once a week with our staff, with our staff and our resident coaches. It is not a mandatory call, but everybody usually shows up at it.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's people, like we've had people share, like, this is my favorite time in the week.
Yeah.
Just to be able to celebrate with one another or wins.
That call has built culture. It really has built culture. We're all over the place with our team, but like that's built culture and grounds us. I can't wait to be celebrating all these wins with people in the academy here as well. Okay. So the prac app for this one is, guys, like, what is the tiniest victory that you can claim today? And I like that. Not just what is a win you can claim, but what is the smallest win? Train your brain to start looking for the smallest, tiniest victories that you can celebrate, because they're there. If we're only looking for the big things, you're going to be the person that shows up to the wins call, and you know who I'm talking about. Person who's listening. Okay, I'm talking about you, Bryant. But you don't do this anymore.
He doesn't. No.
He doesn't do it. It's like, I don't really have anything to
This habit has changed.
Well, he went through certification. That's fine.
Yeah.
Anyways, but like you, but like just small, go small. Go really, really tiny. There's humility in this, folks. And there's humility in that, and just being able to celebrate those victories. It puts you in that place of praise. It's a great place to be. Okay. Third habit here also applies to examination. Build the habit of claiming those opportunities for 1% growth, 1% improvement.
So really, just measuring success in tiny increments.
Yeah, but also
But how is that different from the last one?
But it's overcoming. So we're kind of looking at like victories.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the same. But like it's when I'm building my resolution. Right now we're kind of getting to this place of the examine where you're building a resolution.
Okay.
You might say like, hey, as I've started like this with my kind of getting rid of the phone. At 6 o'clock at night, I'm gonna plug my phone in. I'm gonna leave my room, and I'm not gonna look at it at all. All right. And then all of a sudden it's just like, but I got to get a flight, or I got to check this, or like there's like a practical thing that has to do with the phone that's there. And so it was like, all right, this isn't really working. So like, or I'm not sticking with this. What is something else that I could do?
So it's almost like small. So I see what you're saying.
What is a smaller victory?
I see.
And this is something that Exodus 90 actually helped me to kind of whittle this down, where it's just like, okay, I recognize that I have a habit of staying on my phone too much, arguably in my estimation, more than I need to, because the fruits are I'm not being present to my family. That's kind of like one of my metrics here. And so I want to improve that. All right. So like the hard, I'm going to do this and lock the phone away, that wasn't working for me. So, but this is something that has started to work. Mm-hmm. When I start to open the phone, I ask myself the question, is this necessary, what I'm about to do? Mm. And just that, I just ask the question, and I pause for a moment, and I allow myself to make a decision. And sometimes it's yes, and sometimes and I put the phone down. And like, gosh, those are tiny victories in the moment, but it's something that's so great. It's kind of like, maybe you want to, you want to stop drinking to excess, or you want to bring, like, maybe you're on 4 glasses of wine, you want to bring it down to 2 glasses of wine. Even being able to get in that habit of asking with every sip of wine, why am I, is this okay? Like, how do I feel about this? Why am I choosing this?
Okay.
And being intentional about choosing it.
Can I clarify the distinction between these two?
Sure.
That I hear.
Yep.
So the first one, or the second habit, which is claiming the smallest victories, that's more reflection.
Looking backwards, yes.
Looking backwards. This next one is, okay, as I'm creating
resolutions,
a protocol or resolutions or goal, I don't make it be all big.
Yes.
Right? So that it does kind of counter that whole like thought that everybody has about their mission. Like, it has to be big and it has to be huge,
yes,
and it has to be,
overwhelming,
make a huge impact on yes, every single person. Yeah. Okay. So now I get it. So what is a way of doing that? Sorry.
Well, okay. So the practice, it's make it really small. Like, really try to make these improvement resolutions, make them small. Teeny tiny. And again, it's reducing it down to these things.
That's why I think the delay and pray is like so helpful for me.
Yes.
Because the minute somebody's like, stop doing this altogether, I'm like completely resistant to that. But if I'm like, oh, all I have to do is delay for like 5 minutes and I can still do it, I can do that. And yes, like in that moment of delay, I can pray.
You've just inserted a small fast, and there is grace and in that small resolution fast too. And yeah, you've surrendered this to the Lord. You've surrendered that situation to your God-given reason, and you're no longer being led around willy-nilly by just the urge, the momentary passion that's there. So these are the things where we can start to really, it just creates a little bit of space for the new habit, right? Yep. And it's not just a habit that is like white-knuckled, but a habit that's being chosen with your will, based on reason, again and again and again.
Amen.
Okay. All right. So if you're this person that asks the question that says, I identified all of these things, and maybe you do your nightly examination, you find all of these things that you want to fix in that moment. You didn't just do one thing, but you found tons of things, okay? the Lord can kind of like, maybe that's the case. Bring those all to the Lord, right? Still, I would say, dial it down to one. And if you're like, which one do I choose? Maybe you have a predominant vice, right?
Yes.
Maybe in the predominant vices, predominant faults, kind of the big ones are pride, vanity, or sensuality, right? Getting to know what your prominent vice is and say, okay, which of these things that I need to fix is really kind of most tied to that prominent fault.
I really want to do a podcast on prominent fault.
I know,
predominant fault.
I was talking yesterday to Jean-Marie over on, she does a lot of work with Father Ripperger's team. He said, like, this is something that is big on Father Ripperger's mind right now. It's like this predominant faults is very important to pay attention to. So it's so important.
So many people are like, what goal do I choose? I'm like, just try not to fall into your predominant fault today. Like that's a great goal to have.
That's a good thing.
It's a good place to start for sure.
But another way of looking at that is then asking, when this comes down to your resolution, what is the counter virtue?
Yes.
Right? So what's the opposite? What's the fault that you've identified? If we can name, it's important for us to grow in the vocabulary of the vices and virtues. If we can name that vice, maybe the vice is cowardice, right? Okay, so now what does fortitude look like in this situation? Or maybe it's like pusillanimity. What does magnanimity look like in this situation? And so it starts to frame the way that you come up with that resolution, right? And then you pick that and just trust that to the Lord. Don't question whether it's the right resolution at that point. Don't question the same way that we tell our coaches, like, don't question if it's the right thought that you captured. Just pick it and work on it and chisel away. This is something that is, growth happens incrementally and it happens over our lifetime.
Yep.
Good. Okay.
I think that's it.
So that's it.
So we solved all of your problems today.
Yes, all of your overwhelm problems.
This podcast. No, I'm just kidding. But okay, so now when you come into our academy, right? Because we're going to invite you in. We will have a free version too. So we are so happy to have you come and join us in the free version of the academy. But when you join our academy and you see all of the stuff that we have for you and you start to get overwhelmed, now you know what to do. And yeah, that's it. Yeah. I thought I was going to say something else, but that was it.
I don't know. I was waiting for it. It was good. And I'd say just a quick recap. All right. So Aaron gave you some hacks on short circuiting that overwhelm. What are those 3 habits that start to help you measure success on tiny increments? First of all, it's the nightly examine or the daily examine, some time a day where you're doing that examination. Very important. Absolutely must have. It's starting to will that, but even making that examine something very small. If you're lying in bed, you ask one question, Lord, where are you inviting me to grow today? That's a great place to start.
Do they have examine reflections on Hallow?
They do.
Okay. Yeah. So you could start there. Yes. You can go get your Hallow app.
Yes.
We are not paid supporting people for Hallow, but we love it. So
they're great. Yeah. They're doing great work out there. Second, then we get into the habits, the examine habits, and then, okay, when we're doing our examination, make those wins, those places of resonance, the places of fruitfulness, make them as small as possible. Get used to finding the tiniest wins, you guys, and celebrate those things. Share them with somebody else. Share them in our community. Share them with your community. Praise God for those wins and thank God for those wins, right? This is going to instill a virtue of humility. Right? Consider this an act of humility, making your wins very, very, very small. Okay. And then finally, when it comes to your resolutions, make those commitments very, very, very small as well. And celebrate those things and just allow it to be, allow yourself to still not be 100% done on your journey tomorrow.
Yes.
Right? But a little bit closer. But a little bit closer.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah. Praise you, Jesus. All right, guys. Thanks so much for sticking around. Maybe we'll see you in the free academy.
I hope we do. All right. Blessings, guys. Hey, thanks for sticking with us in the Catholic Coaching Podcast. If you like what you heard,
please like and subscribe, and we'll see you again.